In today's video, I'm going to cover off different types of properties that we need to be wary of. Not necessarily avoid completely, but we do need to have an understanding of how they may impact our property investment portfolio. So the first one to look at are properties that require a strategy that isn't congruent or doesn't match your rules. Now, I've worked with a lot of investors over the years, and the number one reason why we will, as investors, chop and change and look at one deal and then fall in love with another deal, basically is because we haven't set rules and we don't understand what parameters we're working to. So any property that needs or requires a strategy that falls outside of your rules, be it your knowledge, your risk profile, the amount of time you have available, etc., are ones we need to be wary of. Avoid getting involved with those too much. Waste a lot of time looking at deals that just aren't going to work for you. So setting defined rules and then working with those allows you to discard types of property that aren't going to work for you, and a waste of time, really waste of your time overall. So clear to defined rules will then keep you on track and allow you to only invest the time that you've got in those properties that are actually going to work for you. The next one follows on from the last one in that it revolves around what your rules are, and part of establishing your rules, you need to go through a process and have clarity around what the numbers look like for you. So if we're spending time on properties that look good, but we really don't know how they work as far as the numbers go, as far as the cash flow position, the purchase price, amount of capital required, then we're going to waste a lot of time. Again, drilling down on what that needs to look like will save you heaps of time and also frustration, which is the other thing. So don't look at properties that you don't understand the numbers on or you can't work the numbers back on. And obviously, once you do work the numbers on that particular property, you need to know how that's going to affect your personal situation. So really get that defined, and you will save, again, a lot of time and a lot of frustration. So don't invest in properties, or be very, very wary of looking and going shopping for any particular property, any specific property, any type of property that you don't know how to work the numbers on. Okay, this one might sound a little bit silly, but you want to be wary of properties that the market doesn't want. And when I mean the market doesn't want, it means a large majority of the market. So as an example, if you were to go into a large regional town, if you like, and you're looking at a unit or an apartment, is that really what the market wants? Similarly, if you're into buying, looking at a 5-bedroom property, is that what the market wants? Would the market prefer 3-bedroom properties? You're looking at properties that don't have any garaging or don't have air conditioning or what have you. So you really need to understand what the market wants, because effectively that's what we're doing. We're buying a property to rent and make available to the market. So if that market's small, then again, that could, when things tighten up, vacancies increase, etc., and then the demand from renters reduces, then you want to make sure that whatever property you have in your portfolio appeals to the greater market. So be wary of any property type that the market doesn't want. So establish what the market wants, go and get it and give it to them. Okay, the next one is properties located in areas where there aren't enough intrinsic drivers. So intrinsic drivers are internal drivers that will be there on an ongoing basis to help with basically increasing the value of a property. So again, the value of anything is really determined by what the market's willing to pay. So what is that market? If it's a small market, so it's a small population, if young people are leaving and going to other areas to find employment, etc., what is there that is going to allow that property value to keep increasing internally? So there are external factors, external drivers that come and go, but what we're really looking at is what are the number of internal intrinsic drivers that are going to remain in place after we acquire the property to continue to have that property's value grow. Again, the market will set the value of that property if you're looking at it. So we've all got to also look at, well, what's the level of employment there? What's the population growth look like? Because at the end of the day, if the wages are very, very low and there's not a lot of demand for jobs and there's not a lot of job opportunity, then wages will continue to stay low, which means that, again, your income or the income of the general market will determine what they're willing to pay for anything. So we need to make sure that those intrinsic drivers. So you might look at a property and go, "Wow, this looks really good. It's a cheap property compared to my area, etc., etc." But there may be a reason for that. So just make sure that whatever area you're looking at and spending time researching on has enough of those intrinsic drivers to allow that property that you're going to acquire to continue to increase in value over time. Cheap properties. I've had numerous conversations with clients around value versus cheap. At the end of the day, a property can be cheap, and there may be a very good reason for why it is cheap. So what we want to make sure is that we're buying properties that, again, are going to obviously provide us with growth over time. Value is when they go out. If we're funding a purchase via a loan, then the lender will send a valuer out. A couple of things that valuers will look at, there's a number of them, but a couple they'll look at is market risk and environmental risk. So I won't go into too much detail, but you need to, if you find a very, very cheap property, have a look at and ask some questions and do some research around why it is so cheap. There could be some reasons. Now, you put an offer on a property, the valuer goes out, has a look at it, reports back to the lender and says, we rate this very high in the risk category. So therefore the lender is likely to say, no, they're not going to accept it as security. So just be wary of what you're paying for. Cheap doesn't always mean that it's good. And also too, that we're going to have those bounce backs from valuers actually inspecting the property and determining, the risk associated with the lender securing or taking security over that property. If you're paying cash, then you need to be even more careful around bringing that property into your portfolio. So, because you're not going to have that valuer go out and look at it and then do that research for you. So you need to really make sure you're on top of what that looks like. So cheap isn't always good. All right, so I've left this one till last, and it's probably the biggest one, which is be wary of property types that lenders don't like, particularly obviously if you're getting finance to fund the purchase of that property. So what does that look like? Well, again, if we just state the fact that lenders are in the business of selling money, they're not looking to acquire property. So they are worst case scenario people, if you like, in the sense that they're looking at, if we give you money, what's the worst thing could happen? If we acquire this property, take it on, and you can't make those repayments and we have to sell it quickly, who have we got to sell it to? So that goes to then, well, who wants that property? How large is the market that would take that property off the lender's hands? So be wary of properties that are sort of niche market type of properties. So they could be service apartments, they could be rural property. Again, thinking about who the market, if they've got to sell, who's there to take that property off our hands? This is the lenders are looking at it through their eyes of the lender. So look at it through the eyes of the lender. It could also be that maybe an apartment in a large development complex where a lender said, well, our risk, exposure to risk is at a level where we don't want to take on any more property in that project. If one goes bad, they all could go bad. We're left exposed. It could be, again, as we touched on before, properties in an area where there's a small population. So again, if we have to sell the property, what's the market size that we would be willing to take that property off our hands? So if it's in an area that has a very small population, then obviously that market is small, and the likelihood of someone buying that property may be beneath or below what the lender's willing to risk. There are other types. Got to be a little bit careful, but there was times when lenders were saying, well, look, we'll allow you, we'll lend to, say, even defence housing, but we'll only do it to a 70% LVR. So they may take security over the niche market type of properties, but what they'll do is say, well, we want you to take on or put more of your money, more of your skin in the deal, in the sense that we will fund it. However, you're going to need to provide a larger deposit and put more of your money into the deal. So just be wary of the types of properties that lenders avoid. taking security over. And I fell for this trap myself. In my early days, I got all excited about a property that I saw that had amazing cash flow. Turned out to be a service department, and when I spoke with my broker about it at the time, broker said, yeah, well, look, there's probably a couple of lenders that will provide funds to acquire this property. However, I think even at the time it was like a 40% deposit. So that really killed the deal for me, obviously, because of the capital required. But again, we really need to make sure that if we're going to spend time researching a property, then and we're going to fund or approach a lender for that, for the funding for that property, then we need to make sure that we're spending time on properties that the lenders like. Okay, well, just to clarify again that I'm not talking about avoiding these property types completely. It's just to be wary of them. Your rules are your rules. If you know what that looks like, then you can basically save yourself a lot of time looking at property deals again that just aren't going to work for you. So, and the other one is if you're going to fund a property purchase via a lender, then you need to make sure you're shopping for the type of properties that they're happy to take as security. So look, thank you so much for sparing the time to watch the video. If you haven't already subscribed to my channel, it'd be sensational to have you on board. Also, equally, if you like the video, please feel free to give it a thumbs up. And whatever you choose to do, I wish you all the best on your journey. Thanks so much.